During his lifetime, it's estimated that his worldwide record sales are at over 100 million, making him one of the best-selling music artists of all time. In the UK, he was awarded 10 platinum, 11 gold and 8 silver album certifications and released 11 number one albums. He was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1996, and Rolling Stone named him among the greatest artists in history, and after his death, the greatest rock star ever. Early years. The boy who would be Bowie was born David Robert Jones at Stansfield Road, Brixton, London, on January the 8th, 1947, to parents Haywood Stenton John Jones and Margaret Peggy Burns. The couple married in September of 1947, and David later went to Stockwell Junior School. In the 1950s, the family, including half-brother Terry, moved to Bromley, Kent, and eventually moved into a terraced house in Plainstow Grove in 1995. It was Terry who encouraged his young half-brother's interest in jazz, poetry, and beatnik culture. During his school days, at the age of 15, he was punched in the eye by friend George Underwood, allegedly over a girlfriend. The injury paralysed his left eye, leaving one of his pupils permanently dilated, making his formerly blue eyes appear brown or green. The pair remained friends, however, and David even went on to form his first band with Underwood, the Conrads, in July of 1962. Throughout his early career, he was also in several other bands, including King Bees, Mannish Boys, the Lower Third, and the Buzz. He took the stage name David Bowie after American pioneer James Bowie, who popularised the Bowie knife. Formerly, Bowie attempted to use the stage name of Davy Jones. However, it led to confusion, as it was the same name as the lead singer of the Monkees. In 1976, he released his debut album, titled David Bowie, an amalgam of pop, psychedelia and musical, and failed to chart, the same as his prior singles. It was his first and last released for 2 years. Space Oddity to Hunky Dory. He began to study dramatic arts under the esteemed actor, dancer and choreographer Lindsay Kemp, from avant-garde theatre and mime to commedia dell'arte, and as a result, Bowie became immersed in the creation of a persona to present to the world. During years spent studying, in February and March of 1969, he briefly toured with Mark Bolan's duo Tyrannosaurus Rex and appeared third on the bill, performing a mime act. Later, in July of the same year, 5 days before the launch of Apollo 11, Bowie released Space Oddity and climbed all the way to the top 5 of the UK Billboard chart. Following in November was Bowie's second album. Originally released as David Bowie in the UK, it caused confusion with its predecessor, which was released under the same name. Its early release in the USA was alternately known as Man of Words, Man of Music. However, once the album was reissued in 1972 by the RCA, it became known as Space Oddity. The album, featuring philosophical, post-hippie lyrics on the topics of peace, love and morality, it's acoustic folk rock occasionally fortified by harder rock. The album was not a commercial success upon its release. After establishing himself as a solo artist with the release of Space Oddity, he began to sense a lack of a full-time band for gigs and recording, people he could relate to personally. This was underlined by his artistic rivalry with Mark Bolan, who at the time was working as a session guitarist. The band Bowie assembled as a result comprised of John Cambridge, a drummer Bowie met at the Arts Lab, Tony Visconti on bass and Mick Ronson on electric guitar. Known as Hype, the bandmates created characters for themselves and wore elaborate costumes that prefigured the glam style of the Spiders from Mars. These studio sessions resulted in the release of Bowie's third album, The Man Who Sold the World, in 1970. The album contains references to schizophrenia, paranoia, and delusion, and was a departure from the acoustic folk rock style of Space Oddity to a harder rock sound. Its UK cover exploited his androgynous appearance, depicting Bowie wearing a dress, which he later wore during interviews to the approval of many critics. On the street, his attire resulted in a mostly mixed to positive reaction, often including laughter. It was this outfit that caused a male pedestrian to produce a gun on the street and tell Bowie to kiss my ass. Over the course of the tour for The Man Who Sold the World, Bowie observed two seminal American proto-punk artists that led him to develop a concept that became Ziggy Stardust. a character that combined the persona of Iggy Pop and the musical stylings of Lou Reed, creating the ultimate pop idol. A former girlfriend of Bowie recalls him scrawling notes on a cocktail napkin about a crazy rock star named Iggy or Ziggy, and once returning to England, he declared his intentions to create a character who looks like he's landed from Mars. The surname Stardust was a tribute to the legendary Stardust cowboy whose record was gifted to him during the tour. The glam rock era. Dressed in a striking costume, his hair dyed a reddish brown, Bowie launched his stage show with the Spiders from Mars in the Toby Jug pub in Tolworth, Kingston upon Thames on the 10th of February 1972. The show itself was hugely popular, catapulting him to stardom as he toured the UK over the next 6 months, creating what was described as the cult of Bowie that was unique. Its influence lasted longer and has been more creative than perhaps almost any other force within the pop fandom. The rise and fall of Ziggy Stardust combined the hard rock elements of The Man Who Sold the World with the lighter experimental rock of Hunky Dory. Was released in 1972 and is known as one of the defining albums of glam rock. Starman was issued as a single in April, ahead of the album that cemented his UK breakthrough. Both the single and the album charted quickly after his Top of the Pops performance of the song. The album remained in the chart for 2 years after its release, and 6 months after was joined by Hunky Dory. Bowie's love for acting allowed him to totally immerse himself in his character. Off stage, I'm a robot. On stage, I achieve emotion, and it's probably why I prefer dressing up as Ziggy to being David. This led to problems after an extended period in his persona, making it impossible to separate from Ziggy Stardust and the Thin White Duke later in his career. According to Bowie, Ziggy wouldn't leave me alone for years. That was when it all started to go sour. My whole personality was affected. It became very dangerous. I really did have doubts about my sanity. Later in his shows, Ziggy and Aladdin Sane were theatrical affairs with shocking stage moments, including Bowie stripping down to a sumo loincloth. After the breakup of the Spiders from Mars, Bowie wanted to move on from his persona of Ziggy. During this period, his back catalogue was highly sought after. The Man Who Sold the World had been re-released in 1972, along with Space Oddity. Life on Mars from the album Hunky Dory was released the following year and peaked at 3 on the UK chart. In September of the same year, Bowie's novelty single The Laughin' Gnome from 1967 reached number 6. Plastic Soul and the Thin White Duke. Bowie moved to New York and later settled into Los Angeles in 1974. Diamond Dogs found him heading in the direction of soul and funk, was the combination of two distinct ideas. A musical based on a wild future in a post-apocalyptic city and setting 1984 to music. In the UK, the album went to number 1, featuring hits like Rebel Rebel and Diamond Dogs. Young Americans were the product of the Philadelphia recording sessions in 1975. The album's sound, according to Bowie, was plastic soul and was a radical style that alienated many. This album yielded his first US number 1 with Fame, co-written with John Lennon, who also contributed backing vocals, called Bowie's work great, but it's just rock and roll with lipstick on, earning the honour of being the first white artist to appear on the US variety show Soul Train. Bowie performed Fame and Golden Years, his November single that was offered to Elvis Presley, who declined it. Station to Station 1976 was produced by David Bowie and Harry Maslin and introduced the persona of the Thin White Duke. Visually, the Duke was an extension of the character he played in The Man Who Felt Worth, Thomas Jerome Newton, and as a development of Young Americans, the synthesizer-heavy arrangement in Station to Station prefigured the krautrock-influenced music of his next release.